Welcome to From the Green Velvet Couch podcast. Through her professional career of being a therapist and certified corporate wellness specialist, your host, Shelley O'Neill, has accompanied many on journeys of healing and personal wellness. Now join Shelley and her guest from the Green Velvet Couch.
I'm so honored and excited to have Raffaele Livio Ponti on the podcast from the Green Velvet Couch. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Shelley. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we had the privilege of meeting actually on stage, and I'll let you share a little bit about kind of how we met, but I really want to know about your background, and you just have such an interesting story. So we're just going to hop right in there.
Well, terrific. As you know, but as your listeners know, I'm a professional orchestral conductor, and I began as of course, like anything else. My parents came here from Italy, and they brought nothing with them. They didn't think they were going to stay here. They came just to visit other family that had started to come here. This was the land of opportunity, and like the immigrant story, it just sort of happened in 1955. I think they were planning on coming for about 6 months, just for like a little vacation, because they heard that everybody had jobs. There was gold on the streets. Everybody was working, had money. So they said, we're going to go to the new world and just see what it's like. The idea then was to bring the money back and feed the family. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They loved it so much. They saw the opportunities here, and I was born before they had a chance to return. So it just worked out that way. So here I am, an Italian citizen born in America. So I have dual citizenship, and I find that my story could have been much different with a couple of months either way. I could be living in Italy, who knows? I'd be making pizzas today. Who knows? But instead, they stayed here. Of course, they didn't speak any English. So I didn't speak any English until I went to school. So I grew up speaking Italian and then learned how to speak English by going to school. Therefore, I didn't speak much because I didn't know the language. So I was listening and trying to translate. And my parents learned English by listening to me when I grew up and started, it was kind of an evolution that way. So they were living Italians in America. My point is, they brought only very few things with them. They brought a few recordings, LPs of things like Italian operas, Tosca, Madama Butterfly, Puccini. My father loved the operas of Puccini and Verdi, of course. But so I learned music early on because that's what I heard. It was language for them. We heard it in the house. They would play it. I think it was more to comfort themselves because they were surrounding themselves with the language. So, of course, once I got into middle school, elementary school, middle school, playing music was a natural thing because they loved music. My father played, my mother sang. It was part of the culture. So I began as a violin player. Like anybody probably thought it would be easy to do, right? Played violin, played piano, and that was part of our education. That was as important to my family as probably brushing our teeth, getting a good night's sleep, and making sure you eat your vegetables. It was just something that they thought we needed to do because in Europe, music, art, and culture were part of their life. It wasn't like an option. It was just something we did. Okay.
It was very much a family value that was just held, to just that high standard of that's what's important to our culture, to our family. So I love that.
Absolutely right. And I didn't think it was, I grew up thinking that my family was normal. And I didn't realize that I got into college that we were very different. But that's okay, I think, you know what I mean? I thought everybody played the violin. I thought everybody should play the piano. And isn't everybody eating vegetables? No.
And great Italian food.
And fortunately, I was old enough to realize that I was different. It was okay by the time I figured it out, you know what I mean? But so anyways, that's sort of the way it started. I then became a trumpet player. because the string program in the school district that I was in dissolved the orchestra because of budgeting. And unfortunately, that happens around the country. We see it a lot of places, and it becomes like band land,
Mhm.
where orchestras are going away and people play in bands because
Mhm.
bands are still thriving because football still exists and we need a marching band. So they support that. And fortunately, kids were still playing something, and which is very, very important. Anyways, I played trumpet and I happened to excel at it, which was very, very cool. I had the choice to play baseball. And it was my junior year, senior year in high school. My coach looked at me and said, "You're going to have to make a choice, either sports or music, because both need the same kind of dedication. And it's going to be impossible to play both well." And I didn't really understand what that meant, but I do now, because to be a great athlete, you have to be that dedicated as well as to be a musician. Although I see a lot of parallels now in my life, and as a conductor, as a coach, and a teacher now, I see the parallels too. Anyways, by the time I became a senior in high school, I auditioned and got the fourth trumpet job with the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, where I grew up in Rochester, New York. And David Zinman was the conductor. And I thought, as a senior, 17 years old, to play in a professional orchestra, I thought I had really made it. I thought,
Yeah.
man, this is going to make it. So, of course, baseball wasn't a thing anymore because I had to dedicate myself to music. And like anything in my life, just when I think I know something, I realized I didn't know enough. I didn't know anything because I had to go to the next level. And my life has been a series, that whole thing. So I then ended up going to the Cleveland Institute of Music, studying with Bernard Edelstein, who was principal trumpet at the Cleveland Orchestra. My sophomore year, I began playing with the Cleveland Orchestra. I got the job as assistant principal trumpet to my teacher in the Cleveland Orchestra with Lauren Mazel. And this is now like going from the minor league orchestra, like going from the Rochester Red Wings to a major league orchestra, which is like now playing with the Yankees at 19 years old. And again, I thought I had made it. And I realized at that point it was another epiphany. I had so much more to learn because now I'm sitting on this Yankees bench looking down the bench thinking, there's Yogi Berra, there's Mickey Mantle. What am I doing here? I felt like I didn't belong here. So again, I had to step it up and figure out, what am I doing and how do I get better and how do I make it work? And then it hit me, by staring at all these great conductors, Shelley. That's something. What is happening here? Because the orchestra is wonderful. The Cleveland Orchestra is one of the top five, in those days, was top five orchestras in the United States.
Wow, that's
And
impressive.
I couldn't figure out at 19 and at 20 years old, how come when a different conductor steps on the podium, this orchestra can sound different? And that, to this day, still is something mystical that is I don't understand it. I can't explain it. It's
Mhm.
something that's so magical. It's not magical impossible, but it's mystical in the sense that I can't explain why it happens. Whether it's conductor A or Z, it still happens to this day. It's something about the personality, the gesture, the eyes, the concepts, the physical. It's an amazing concept. Yet you can play the same piece of music with five different conductors, and the orchestra sounds different. And that's what attracted me to. I want to do that because I'm trying to figure out why that happens. How does this body of musicians change? Their chemistry changes, their sound changes, their personality in music changes without saying a word to them, yet we can sound and play the same piece differently. That's the magic. That's what I love about conducting.
And that's so interesting. And I love your perspective, just, comparing it to an athlete, which I think is just spot on. I've worked with both athletes and musicians, and with topics like anxiety, imposter syndrome that you spoke about. A lot of times they'll self-medicate to try and present that persona that they think their audience is looking for. But we always talk about getting lost in the music, getting lost in the actual activity or the sport that you're doing.
Right.
So I think for you, I just love how you made all those connections. But you said something that's so important, and that is, just when we think we get something figured out and we've kind of reached our pinnacle, life, changes in the blink of an eye, and we realize we don't have it figured out. We don't know what to do. So how did you navigate that? Because that is a lot of success very, very young.
It for a long time, and growing up as a young musician, and even this day, we have to make sure we know what the questions are. And I think that's what always puzzles me. I think young musicians or young conductors, for example, they're not sure what to search for in an answer because they're not sure what the question should be.
Mhm.
And that's always interesting because I find, at least in my career, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but the target is constantly moving. All I can try to do is keep hopefully moving forward towards what I think that target is. But I have to be flexible and kind of be willing and able to move this way while still moving forward in some way. Does that make any sense?
And I think you just described true resilience, because the target does move. We think we're going one direction, we're getting closer and closer, and we're almost there, and the target moves. It's that project's not going to happen when we thought it was, or maybe it didn't happen at all, or we have something happen to us and we can't perform like what we thought. There's just a plethora of reasons. So I think you're talking about like resilience and how to keep moving forward even though the target changes. And and I love, before we started the podcast, we really shared your passion that music and art is changing. And so kind of connect that as that target moves, are we valuing music and art like we used to? How is that changing as well?
Oh boy, that's a great, great question. And, we need like 4 weeks to talk about this, I think, because, as wonderful, this is just one point. As wonderful as technology is, otherwise, Dennis, you and I wouldn't be able to communicate with all these listeners right now if it wasn't for great technology. So thank goodness for that, right? But as a teacher, as doing master classes and doing, whether it's a collegiate level, high school level, everywhere I go, I can't get students to stop looking at their phone long enough to say hello to me.
Wow.
I'm constantly getting this. And oh yeah, oh by the way, that's a good point. You know. Now, the information we're getting more communication than we ever have, okay? But we're saying less than we ever have, if that makes any sense, okay?
We're
It
a lot of overstimulation and communication,
absolutely,
but we're
absolutely.
losing that true engagement.
We're losing substance of quality of what are you saying or how you know what I mean? And music is communication. It's all about communicating something that and there's so many levels of that, but technology is great. Now, the years ago, back in the 70s, say, you guys are too young for this, but in the 70s, when I was going to the Cleveland City Music, Friday night for me was like, okay, listen, guys, let's all get together. We're going to do Mahler Symphony Number 5 tonight. You all bring your favorite recording. And we're talking about LPs in those days,
Mhm.
vinyl.
Yeah.
Okay. We're all going to get together. Who's going to get the pizza? Who's going to get the beverage? Let's get together. Bring your favorite. It's going to be Philadelphia with Ormandy. It's going to be Cleveland with Mazel or Zell. It's going to be New York Philharmonic with Toscanini. And we all got together and we all played this recording together in one room, listening to it without earphones, listening all together to the same recording as loud as we could, eating pizza and having a great time. And then we just talked about, I like this one because of that. I like this one because of the tempo. I love the brass section on this one. Oh, that was just amazing. And we shared ideas together. Technology today is wonderful, but everybody's now got their earphones in, myopically listening to that particular recording,
Mhm.
and we're not sharing anymore.
Mhm.
I actually see this now breaking down the orchestra and my rehearsal and performances because players nowadays are becoming so channeled into me, and my own playing, and the playing and sharing of ideas and concepts is breaking down even in the stage now because of this tunnel vision, tunnel listening. And I think that listening being shared. So technology is affecting us. And one way we're getting information faster, but it's breaking down the sharing of the concept and the broadening. Does that make any sense?
Yes, and just on a very basic and formal, way that we grew up, Dennis and I are brother and sister. And, we grew up with the very long console in the living room that was a majestic piece of furniture where there was the radio. It was, for the LPs and the different sizes. But when that played, what happened was everyone was engaged in the music, whether you liked it or not. You were still hearing it, you were sharing it, you were talking about, I don't like that, I do like that, and learning, the lyrics. And so you're right, it was community. That's the word I
Right.
would say. It wasn't just me in my room listening. That's where the music came from.
That's
And
exactly what I'm talking about because it was music was the moment, was the vehicle, but you actually were sitting together. And you don't realize it, but I know you know this, but when an audience or people listen to music collectively, the tempo, the beat, the pulse of the music, your heart rate will adjust to that. So that's why, I mean, people go to rock concerts and they're all dancing and jumping together because their heart rates, their body, their rhythm is all together. So if it's a slow piece of music or the second movement of a symphony, for example, and people start to feel relaxed, your breathing slows, your heart rate slows, and they think they feel sleepy because the reason is that the composer has calmed you down for a moment. The allegro finale, which is triumphant and big, to get you out of the concert hall quick to get a standing ovation. It's all fast and allegro because that's what's happening now in your life. Your heart rate is now picked up. Everybody's feeling it at the same rate. And that's a beautiful thing. You're sharing something together. And that's why the importance of coming to a concert and sharing that moment together is community coming together, experiencing something together, even though we're not talking or sharing verbally what the experience is, you're sharing it all physically together at the same time. And that is something that we're losing by being myopic or singular with ear pods or in a room by yourself. The other thing technology has done is that everybody can record now. There's orchestras that can record, or any soloist can record in their living room and get it up on, all these streaming apps or opportunities. Therefore, I'm not sure we're always listening to A-list performances anymore.
Mhm.
You guys know, I see you're shaking your head.
Yes,
You understand
right. There's
exactly
so
what I'm
much
saying.
so much
It,
access and opportunity. You're like, yeah. may not be
And I heard,
aimless.
yeah,
But
and I hear that flute concerto is being played by a 13-year-old and it's up on Spotify. And I'm not sure that's our goal of what we should be listening to. In the old days, you had to have a record contract and you had to have some ability and get a contract to be able to do it. Now everybody's brother and sister have a recording deal and or put it up themselves. So I'm not sure we're listening to quality anymore. I mean, you go to the Louvre in Paris, you're going to see some talent.
yeah, absolutely.
It's not me painting by numbers, putting it up saying, well, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
There's a different level thing. They're all expression, and I think it's all great and it's all therapeutic, but we
Mhm.
can't be looking at the same thing, calling it art. And
Yes.
that's what's happening to music also. So we have to be
Mhm.
careful. Who knows what's good anymore? I'm not sure we're gauging it by the same level anymore.
Well, and you brought up such a great point, and I know that Dennis had a question about this, about how our bodies feel with different performances. So I'm gonna let you all talk about the question that you had asked Dennis earlier.
Well, and actually, before we get into that, you were talking about technology. And technology originally, it's like it was going to give us more time, more times with our families. And what we've seen, it's actually pulled us. We want to make more money and do more of this and more of that. And technology has kind of done that to us. But even when we went through COVID, in certain genres of music where they couldn't, professional groups couldn't travel and sing, then what you had a lot of people doing, and it reminded me of when you were talking about your sections of your orchestra and how they get so alienated, kind of what you said. But it's interesting how these groups couldn't travel anymore. So then what they would do is and some of them had studios and other ones would just use simple things like mics or whatever. And they would actually get online and play with each other. So my question to you would be, how do you feel music brings into people's lives? Because if you go to, just like you had mentioned, if you go to a opera and it's a sad opera or it's a happy opera, it can affect a person and their emotions. And I really think music is a very strong thing. And how would you describe that?
Well, you make a great point. That is that, for example, Broadway's doing it now, and during, like you said, when everything was locked down, people were recording, and they were putting out actually very good quality performances because they're all playing to a click track. They can be different parts of the world. Actually, we saw some things happening. The quality was great. It was all together, but it lacks the chemistry because the only thing they can achieve is perfection. And perfection is not music or art. And the problem with the recording industry is they've made us believe that if it's not note perfect and perfectly in tune and perfectly synced up and nobody missed a note, then it's not valid. And that's not art. Because if we look at paintings, for example, if you look at the Mona Lisa, it's not perfect. If you look at any painting, the Last Supper is not perfect. If you look at the brushstrokes, if you look at any ceiling in the Vatican, it's not perfect. That wasn't the goal. You see flaws in the brushstrokes or thicker and thinner or something that happened. You know what I mean? Because it's art. And that's what music is art. So the only thing they've achieved is perfection. The Beatles, you might remember that band. Again, I'm pretty sure you guys would remember the Beatles, right? Do you remember
Absolutely.
the single microphone concept or any jazz artist when they got four guys in a room, in this case, the Beatles, that's why I'm saying guys, they put them in a room with one microphone and they had to control the balance themselves by playing louder or softer, singing louder or softer, but they were championing and capturing that live chemistry. Like what we're doing right now is capturing this chemistry of our interaction by bantering back and forth. It's like playing a tennis match. The better you hit it to me, the better I hit it back to you. And that's how the chemistry in music happens. It doesn't happen when you're sitting in a different part of the world with a great video or a great microphone. It only happens if you're in the room together. So when people come to a symphony, the audience is part of the performance because we feel that vibe. We feel their heart and breath and their energy in the concert hall as well as they feel ours in the concert hall. And you come, I don't know, it's like if if you're gonna go for it on the stage, you gotta play. And there's a risk of missing. And that big note, that big climax, that big phrase, if the trumpet goes for it and cracks, we went for the field goal and you missed, and we lose the game, and there's the buzzer and it's over. That's the fun of going to a football game, right? I mean, it's that clincher, right? It's
It's
part of
experience.
music and it's experience. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But if you know it's going to be precise and accurate and edited out and fixed later, it takes the fun away from it. It takes the art away from it. And that's what the element of live music. So yeah, it was correct. We were able to do it, but it's not the same. It's not the same as experience live performance. Did I answer any of that, Dennis?
Yes, but so I'm just going to say two words and see what your response to me is. Perfection versus emotion in music.
Ah, go with the emotion, man. If you want
All
perfection, do something else. It's not about perfection. And the worst thing we can tell a musician or our children or student is strive for perfection because that's unobtainable.
It's
That's
the
unobtainable.
experiences.
It's exactly right. And it's like with me and my journey as a conductor right now, like we talked about early on, it's always these epiphanies and realizing the more I know, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. It's the same old thing. It's the journey to getting there that has been my journey in life in music, but in every aspect of my life. So perfection doesn't exist. It's trying to get better and improve and grow. I mean, it's all these words. And Shelley, I'm sure you talk about this with your clients on a momentary basis. It's the journey. Don't you agree with that?
Yes. And often when people reach the level of success that they've worked very hard to attain, although there's some perks that come with that, what they talk about is the journey was where the deep friendships came from. The real grit was developed. The real knowledge was gained. It wasn't from getting to the top and reaching all those goals. The beauty was in the experience, in the journey. And I think we forget that we're so goal oriented that you got to have this, you got to get this, you need to achieve that, and I'm a very driven entrepreneur in that sort of thing. But I know for me personally, I can lose out on the experience. But if I look back over my professional career, it's never been attaining a level or a certification. It's been about the relationships with clients, with companies. The beauty has been in the brokenness of the healing that I got to be a part of or to witness. It was never a CEU, like I said, a different, you know, certification. It was the experience of being with someone else when they were going through something that was very maybe difficult, but it was very meaningful. And I think that's what when you're sharing when music is an experience and it is meaningful and it's so therapeutic, I've always used music in working with children, with families, with adults. Music can take someone or it can share a story that I could never read, I could never express, but if I have a song, and I used to do a lot of work with addiction, and there were certain types of songs from all over different genres that really resonated with people who were recovering, and it was so therapeutic. And all I was doing was playing the song, but what people took out of that or shared was just so impactful.
I think that's such a great witness right there. I just witnessed what you just said is just powerful and beautiful. You're changing lives, and you realize the importance of music. And I think it's such a wonderful thing. It's funny because we have to be careful. Our society has taught us that if you don't have a huge house, if you're not driving a BMW, and you're not making, six figures, you're a failure. That's not the goal. That's not happiness. That's not joy. That's not what we're here for. That's not what it is. And when I changed my focus, that okay, maybe I'm never gonna. It's not in my cards to conduct the New York Philharmonic. That's not going to happen for me. But my journey is when I changed the thinking to how can I inspire today my musicians to play past their current capabilities on a daily basis? No matter what orchestra, if it's my orchestra, the Paducah Symphony Orchestra, the Orchestra Bel Canto in Italy, or any orchestra I guest conduct, how do I inspire those players without speaking words, with gesture, eye, hand, breath, movement? How do I get them to play better than they did 5 seconds ago or yesterday? When that became my goal and my drive, every day is a challenge. Every day is a success because I can't explain how it happens, but that became my dream and my goal. And that brings me happiness now. And when I can see an audience cry, that makes me happy. When I see an audience laugh, that makes me happy because they're experiencing the music.
Exactly. When I had the luxury of being on stage and you were asking questions and I was, on a panel and watching the audience and then having the performers. I mean, I had a view that very few people get to have. I got to watch you, but I got to experience watching the audience be moved and they were so authentic and appreciated, and then they wanted to share how they felt, like, after they would come up with you, and I remember sitting there thinking, "This is one of the most beautiful moments in my life because I get to witness I'm getting to witness not only, the level of performance and things that were on stage and that you were con conducting and different things, but I got to see the interaction there, not as an audience member, but being on stage and not as a musician. Because I'm not, my brother's a musician. He's way more artistic than me. I love music. I love art. Frankly, I'm not really good at either one of them, but I appreciate and I love and I can use them in my work, but I'm not the talented one at all.
But your
So,
talent is where you are as a therapist and a life coach. And that's why you were, as my guest, you were a fabulous guest, by the way, because you brought the perspective that I was looking for. And you're exactly right. The point of the whole thing is music is simply not just entertainment. And
mhm,
I'm almost insulted that people think it's just entertainment because it's so important to our life. If you look back in history, I mean, the Bible talks about music. That's a
mhm,
long time ago. That's an old book. It had
mhm,
rhythm. We were using rhythms to communicate before language came. We were using pitches by carving out bones to communicate with each other before they could speak the language that we know it as we know it today. I mean, music and dancing and movement are innate part of our body, which is healing. And music as a therapy is very, very important now. And that's your perspective, and your conversation on that show and that program was very, very useful, important, and powerful to not only to me and to the program, but to the listeners that were in that audience that day. So thank you for that. But I can't agree more with the fact that it is so vital. And Dennis, you had talked a little bit pre-show about this frequency of how it affects our body. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I hadn't, and I've played the piano since I was like 8 or 9, and I play by ear. And I always joke, musicians will get it. I don't play by note. I never could learn by note. I play by ear, and sometimes my ear gets sore. But I've
Boom, boom.
always exactly. I've always had, they say this, and you kind of have the music inside you. But long story short, I heard this group about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. They were talking. They went into the recording studio, and they wanted to record, and somehow they had found out about the Earth's frequency. And I believe, if I'm not wrong, it's called the Schumann frequency or whatever. And they found out about that, and they ended up recording it in that, and the difference that they felt it made in the connection they had. Can you expound a little bit more about not only personal, and we were talking earlier, it's like if you're a musician and that's what you do, music is your life, but how does that frequency fall into that category of being a musician?
Right. Pythagoras was, the ancient Greek who decided that we came up with music and all these things, and every pitch on the piano, as a pianist speaking to you, has a frequency, because that's the frequency that the strings vibrate. Okay. So everything in life, if you think about it, is vibrating, right? I mean, we can get into that whole thing too, but everything from our breath to the vibration of sound, our eardrums, life is vibrating. So frequency is very, very important. And I think the frequency that you're talking about is 432 hertz, right? 432. And that is actually a pitch, because throughout history, music pitch has changed. And we tune to an A pitch, meaning the note A. Every time an orchestra tunes, we tune to the note A from the oboe, and that's the beginning of every concert. In the day when 432 was lining it up, they said the earth and our body lines up perfectly at that frequency. Nowadays, our pitch, at least musically, is about 433, which is quite a bit higher, 440, 443. So 32 is quite a bit, almost 10 cents less. So what that means is, like a string, if you can think about it like a violin, the pegs on a guitar or a tuning a violin, at 432, it's a more relaxed vibration. So which means the neck of the instrument is relaxed. The strings can vibrate a lot more, which is the same thing with us. We're more relaxed. Everything's vibrating a little looser, more relaxed. And Shelly's having a better day because her clients are having a more relaxed, happy day. Now we're going to put the tension on, which is Monday morning driving to work, by the way, with a little bit too much caffeine, right? Now we're at 440. The string tension is higher on the instrument, means the neck is now tense and the pitch is brighter. Everything's higher, and we're a little more on the edge of our seat now. Every instrument's tuned higher. It affects the audience listening as well. So it has the same relationship to a string instrument as it does to the human body. So it does have something to do with it, but it has that louder, faster, brighter, more exciting, let's get it done, let's drive this whole thing home. And it's creating a lot of tension in music. It's creating tension in our lives, and it's creating tension in life. And I think it's all related. So 432 is something that Giuseppe Verdi, which in the 1800s was writing to. Now, that also being said, if the note seems lower, those tenor notes, those high C's that the tenors were singing in those operas today are much higher and more difficult to sing than they were back when Verdi actually wrote the opera. So it's changed everything. It's just a remarkable thing. I prefer 432. The problem is, to get an orchestra to tune that low now would be almost impossible to go that low as an orchestra, because the instruments are being made to play at 440 or 442 or 443, which means the joints on the head joint would have to be pulled out more. The clarinets would have to be pulled out more, and they almost would fall apart at this point.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
fascinating.
just, Yeah, it's just a different thing. It's just a whole
So
different thing.
it almost sounds like what you're saying about going from 432 and now they're 440 and 443 or whatever. It almost is emulating the way we kind of see the world today. The world is, it's like it's ramping up. It's not as laid back. And Shelley, you can probably talk about this in the clients and things that you see. It feels like everything is more strained.
Mhm.
It's almost like an instrument is getting tighter. That's the way society feels.
It's exactly right.
It
I
can.
see it from, yeah, it's from, I don't know. It just leaving in the morning, just getting on the road, you can tell by people's driving who's angry by the way they drive. I mean, you see it, right? And it's like everything's fast. And if I don't get that email out in 10 seconds or text them back in 15 seconds, they're gonna think I'm mad at them. I don't know. It's like it's got we need to relax. You know, it's a funny thing because when I go back to Italy in the summer times and make music, it takes me about, well, it starts after 2, 3 days or a week for my body to change rhythm and to relax. But I also notice it uh, going back to Paducah, like
Really?
coming from, let's say I come from New York and I'm guest conducting the week. I go to Paducah in 2 days. My heart rate changes, my breath changes. It's a little more relaxed, more beautiful. People can talk to me in Paducah. Whereas if I talk to people in New York on the streets, I have to, what are you talking to me for? What do you, what do you mean, hello? What do you mean, good morning? What do you mean by that? But people are friendlier and nicer in different parts of the country. Do you guys
Mm.
notice when you travel around the United States,
Yeah.
there's different rhythms, different
Yes.
feels? Yeah, I don't
Mhm.
know where you are, but the
Mhm.
rhythm's different there than it is in Florida, different in New York, different in Chicago, different in Paducah. I find that the life in the rhythm and my heart rate, and therefore, when I'm conducting orchestras but like say when I'm with the Paducah Symphony, that allegro, meaning fast, is different than a New York fast
Mhm.
or a Chicago fast or a Florida fast. So allegro means fast in music, but it's a different rate of fast or a different
Mhm.
kind of fast. So I find the people walking on the sidewalk, that tempo is different than the concert hall tempo and every orchestra in every related city. It's a funny thing.
I noticed that when I was traveling to Europe the past few years, it really challenged me to rethink, as an entrepreneur, just that whole hustle culture. And by the time I came back to the US, like you mentioned, my speech was slowing down, just my daily, how I've accomplished things. And what I learned was, and I'm like, why did it take me this long to figure this out? Because I think because I was saturated with other people who were looking at the same lens that, that I had been looking at, which is faster, harder. You got to show that you're a good employee or a good business owner, and you got to be on top of it 24/7. And it really wears you down. And what I realized was I could be very intentional and work a lot less hours. And I wasn't, quote, as busy, but I was way more productive and in a
And
short amount of time.
better
Right. Better.
quality.
So,
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
so I think
I
the
never,
words that, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. It's exactly right. It's like a difference between living to work or work
Mhm.
to live. And in
Mhm.
Italy, for sure, and especially in the small towns, let me just share this real quick. I don't know how they make a living. I don't know how they live because the shops don't stay open 24 hours a day there. If you don't buy your bread and your cheese and your bottle of wine or whatever you're going to do for dinner, you know, at the time that they happen to be open for the day, you've missed out.
Yes.
And it's enough to have a loaf of bread, a little cheese, and a glass of wine and go home and be happy. Therefore, you put the close sign on your door because I've got it for the day. I'm done. I don't know how they do it. It's just amazing because they have enough. It's enough for me to eat today. That's all I need. They don't have a big house. They don't have a car. They just walk. They live. They're breathing. It's a different type of lifestyle. It's just it's changed my perspective on everything.
Mhm. Yeah, I always think that travel really expands your mind, your thinking, your customs, your traditions. At least for me, I grew up in a small rural area in Southern Illinois, and people just didn't travel extensively. They just didn't.
Right.
So I was pretty, I had a very small bubble. But what I noticed too, and it stuck with me, is I was in Greece and talking with this little lady, and she had her very small bag, and like you said, her cheese and her wine for the evening, and that she was going to make pasta. So I was walking with her, and there were all of these steps. Like, I don't mean 20 steps, I'm talking 50, 60, 70 steps to get back to her house. And she walked it every day, and I was struck by what good shape she was in, and the movement and that sort of thing. But I also learned that I would get fussy because something wasn't open. I'm like, what do you mean it's not open, it's closed again? And I really it was a good wake up call for me, and I realized just how impatient. I always considered myself a patient person when I'm not. I'm just doing what's in the American culture, and hustling and that sort of thing.
Right. That's a good point. Dennis, I want to address one thing Dennis said because you're a pianist. Do you play, you said guitar also?
The only guitar I play is the bass guitar.
Oh, bass guitar. But you said you never studied or you didn't really study. You play by ear. I have to tell you, music school doesn't define a musician. You are as much a musician as I am, or even more, because music is music and you're a musician. Whether you're schooled or trained, I think, I have to be honest with you, I think too much music education is going to ruin music
Really?
because the real musicians are musicians. Every child has a voice. Every child can learn to use their voice. Every child can dance. Every child can draw. It's only until we tell them they can't that they don't. I think everybody should be playing something or singing or playing. There was a day when everybody had a piano in the house. Everybody's
Really?
grandparents had an accordion. They won't admit it in public. They won't admit it, but everybody had an accordion. You remember those things? You squeeze and you play. You know, you find it now in an antique shop somewhere, right? Because
It
they're
was
trying to
behind the
hide it.
console stereo was where it was behind.
There you go. There you go. I'm offended you called it furniture. That was an instrument. Come on. But there was a piano in every household, and we didn't have the TV on 24 hours a day. You said you got together, listened to the recordings. Remember, you said it earlier. We got together. The old days, they had a radio. They would listen to Radio Hour or the Tuscanini Hour when they had that's all they had. But you were sitting around listening to a comedy show, or TV came in watching. It's collective. It's doing things together. I think that's what it is about, coming together, experiencing something together, sharing something together. That's what church is. Get together, share an idea. That's what groups are for. That's what Rotary's for. That's what civic groups are for. That's what sports do. They bring people together. That's what the symphony does. It brings people together and sharing collectively. And even though we may be listening to you play piano, Dennis, playing the same piece, we're all going to walk away listening and feeling something different from what you just did or what you just said through music. And I think that's beautiful. So you and I are musicians, man. Play, 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 and share. Going to school doesn't make a difference because you don't learn to be a musician at school. You learn the theory, you learn some dynamics, some idea, and we can talk music history and aesthetics that way. But I'm going to tell you, Luciano Pavarotti, they never taught him to read music because they thought it would only impair him musically. They
Wow.
wanted to be natural, learn by ear and share it. Where did the Beatles go to school? They didn't go to Juilliard. Look at the Beatles. They changed the world. Some of the greatest musicians. Where did Picasso go? He didn't go to the art school. He learned art. He just did it, right? So I encourage
Right.
everybody
That's
to
true.
pick up a brush, paint, sing, dance, play the violin. Don't conduct though. It's a dangerous thing. Playing with a sharp stick. I don't recommend playing with a sharp stick. It's not a good idea. It's very dangerous.
Well, I think one thing that I've learned is I'm a very perfectionistic personality type person, and I hate that about myself because I look when I go to, and you were asking, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm literally 2 blocks from the Ryman Auditorium. I've been to the Ryman a few times. I've been to the Grand Ole Opry, but, and this is just personally, when I go out, it's great to hear somebody hit every note, but there's something about when you go and somebody's playing with their heart and soul and it moves you. And Shelley had spoke earlier about when she was at the, and I wasn't able to make it, but when y'all were there at the symphony, and it works in music, but it works for you too, Shelley, because when you can touch people with your heart and music, it's amazing. And I think I could be wrong, Raphael, but I think when most musicians, generalizing the statement, their one goal, they used to have some for the money and the fame, but I think a lot of them love the feeling of being able to touch somebody through their music. But Shell, even though you don't play music, the talent that you were given and your gift is to help people and touch them emotionally, spiritually, physically, like in the 4 centers of wellness that we talk about. That is your gift, and you touch a lot of people that way, just as musicians touch them with their playing.
Very well said.
Oh,
In some ways, and Shelley's actually using music as part of her therapy. She
mhm.
mentioned early on, which I just think is fabulous. So kudos to that, applause. But I think we are doing similar things with different techniques,
Mhm.
trying
Agreed.
to improve the quality of life through art and music is what I try to do. Because if you just look at it like sound and just music, entertainment, you're missing the point. They've now have proven that music is not only, in the old days, it was just playing kumbaya with a guitar and a tambourine next to somebody and they're next to their sick bed or something and making them feel happy. But it's gone so far beyond that because now they're showing that it has medical benefits to Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, and all kinds of ailments and sicknesses and situations. So doctors are actually doing it. I just recently read that doctors are now recommending concerts by prescription. And
That's fabulous.
I think that's where we need to be going. You need to go to the symphony this weekend. And I would honor that as a free ticket.
Mhm.
I think
Oh,
that's what we should get to, especially in Paducah with the Paducah Symphony, because we have such a great medical community there between both
yes.
hospitals and all the specialists there and all the specialists like you there,
Mhm.
where we should be saying, I think you need to go to the symphony because I think it'll be therapeutic for you.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we should be doing.
Mhm.
So that's our next talk, and that's where we should bring this whole thing because it costs nothing to go to hear it.
That's
I think I would validate that as beneficial to people's lives, improving the quality of somebody's life, through art and music. And music is art, is what I mean.
Well, since you have prescribed it, I'm gonna take you up on that because I totally agree. I really, really think that's just so important to our overall health, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health, and even our financial health. I think it's just very valuable. So thank you. Well, we've covered just so much, and I was so just intrigued when I met you and loved. I just walked away wanting to know more and to hear more. And I feel like our listeners will now have that same opportunity. So thank you for taking time out of your incredibly busy and global schedule to come onto the podcast. Can you tell our listeners how to follow you, kind of where you're at so they can support you as well?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that the both of you are just wonderful. Dennis, you as a wellness specialist, and Shelley, you as a therapist and life coach. I have respect for both of you. I think what you both are doing is just A-list material. Everybody should be in touch with both of you. Just spend 5 minutes with either of you, and you're going to feel better about yourself, no matter who you are. And I think terrific. I'm honored to just have had a few minutes to spend with both of you. So thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, people can just go to rponti.com, www.rponti for Raffaele, Ponti.com. You can see videos, you can see what I'm doing. Follow me here. Come to the Paducah Symphony if you're in Paducah, or just watch videos and have fun. Whatever you do, I don't care where you are, just listen to great symphony music, great opera, great music. Sing, dance, jump for joy. Just enjoy music, enjoy your life. And I hope to meet you all somewhere someday with music.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Ciao.